about the mapping the news activities, which are being added to the Nystrom World platform. These have been available for those of you who are active classroom subscribers. We've had these for the past year, but we're now adding the mapping the news activities to all Nystrom World accounts. So whether you have the mapping program that we call the geographer, just the atlases or atlas packs that we call the researcher, or the mapping programs that includes the explorer, any of those, you'll be receiving access to these mapping the news activities. The mapping the news activities are published once a month, every month during the school year. So we generate about 9 per year. And the idea is to take some sort of a current event or something that's happening out there in the world and engage students with a close reading, with a mapping activity, and with some assessment questions that then ask them to reflect on what they've learned. So let me give you a better idea about how to find the information. So I'm in my Nystrom World account here, and I'm going to go to my activities search. That'll bring up all of the activities available to me. And the best way to, oh, that wasn't supposed to happen. I went to move the videos and it closed me out of the platform altogether. Okay. So here we are with the basic interface. We're going to go to the activities search. And once here, the easiest way to get to the mapping the news activities, I'm going to give you 2 options. One is to go to advanced search, go to the series title, and find our series title, Mapping the News. You hit search then, and it'll list all of the mapping the news activities for you. And the newest one, the most recent one, is always going to be on top. So we can see this is the one that just came out this month. Homelessness last month, climate change maybe back in February, and then we go back here to the beginning of the school year or the last summer where we're mapping George Floyd protests. So you can see that went from George Floyd to mapping polls leading up to the presidential election, then looking at the election results, then going to an assessment of the coronavirus and tracking the global spread, and we make that so that it can be updated. Obviously, when this came out in maybe December, the numbers have changed quite a bit since then, but we have students going out and finding more up-to-date information, and then so you can see all of the different choices that you have here. So these will remain in the coming year, and then we'll continue to add to these. Now, if you didn't search by going to the series title, you can also just go here and click in the keyword search area and type in news, and a couple of extra things come up like this Atlas of U.S. History activities, but basically you get the mapping of the news activities. So 2 easy ways to get to the mapping the news activities. Once again, we started on our main page, we went to the activities search, and then we did the search for news. Okay, and we have the different resources here. So let's take a look at what one of these might look like. I'm going to go back to last summer and look at the George Floyd protests, just to give you an idea of the overall structure of a mapping the news activity. Once we've reviewed that particular lesson, I'm going to go to a student view of the homelessness lesson, and I'm going to actually go through and do it as if I were a student completing parts of the activity so we can get that perspective of how does this really work. So I want to view this. I can click on the little eye here to launch this one, and we get a little bit of an overview here. We can see clear objectives, analyze the causes of the protests and the events leading up to the protests, locate the protests on the United States on a map, and compare protest activity in a major city with protest activity in your hometown or neighboring city. So once again, this was very timely at the time. I think still evergreen and relevant for issues that the students need to engage with. All of the Mapping the News activities are divided into 3 parts: a brief reading introduction, then a mapping activity, and then summary questions in order to get the students to tie together the reading that gave them some background, the mapping activity that they participated in, and then to sort of be able to sort of make that more concrete for them, answering the summary questions at the end. So here we have this brief overview. You can see it's not very long. It's about 300 words. All of the introductions are 300 to 500 words. So it's a nice reading that can be used as a close reading activity. We don't want to overwhelm the students with too much content, but there's enough here to give them a context and background information for what they're about to do. Then they might go to the mapping activity, and this is going to ask them to actually create a map. Now we're in a teacher account right now. So as I go to full screen here to better show this to you, we're actually looking at the answer key of if the students had created this map appropriately, and you can see they're identifying other people besides George Floyd who maybe had been killed at the hands of police, what were the dates, what happened, as well as they're putting in other types of markers. Here are the instructions that are leading them through, and they're reading, and so place a city stamp at each location below. Use zoom level 4 when placing your stamps. And we'll see this in a minute when I go into to model this for you, but if I want to go to zoom level 4, I hit the plus, and so it gives me an idea of like where I should be, and then here are the cities, and I'm able to find the cities and mark them up and go through that activity. So it takes the students through step-by-step instructions on what they're supposed to sort of be mapping and put into their map. Let me escape back out here. And so now that we've done, say we've done the reading and the mapping activity, then we would go to the summary questions. The summary questions, once again here, we are in the teacher mode. So in green, we're going to see possible answers. So what are some incidents that sparked protests against police violence, some past incidents, and here maybe Michael Brown or Eric Garner or Freddie Gray were all relevant, and that's something that they learned from their reading and that they also was reaffirmed in the mapping that they completed. What stands out to you from the George Floyd protest? Do you feel that the movement is a turning point and will help create significant change? Why or why not? What changes would you like to see? So we do leave it open to students to sort of have their own interpretation. They don't have to agree that these are necessarily important or relevant protests. They can say, I think people should have been better behaved and not gone out there, or whatever their response might be. But we try and give students an option so that we do give them content that will help set the context, but not necessarily determine the opinion or the conclusion that they need to come to. Now, once again, I am in the teacher view here. So if I did click on hide answers, it would show me this student view or a version of the student view. And if I do this for the mapping activity as well, it'll give me a blank map rather than the one that we have. And so see, this is more like what the students are going to get when they're going to be beginning with their map. So they get a blank map that they go through and follow the instructions and fill in. So that's important to know. We do recommend modeling this for if you're going to be assigning this to your students. It's good to, even if they're doing this online and maybe even remotely, this could be done, of course, by groups of students working together in a face-to-face situation. It can also be done by groups of students or individual students working remotely. But either way, it is good to go through any of these lessons with the students to explain what you want them to do. You're going to have a short reading. I want you to do the reading. I want you, sometimes we ask you to highlight things. You'll see that in a minute. Then you're going to go to the mapping activity. I want you to complete the mapping activity, map all of the elements, and then answer the summary questions at the end. And so you can sort of, maybe we would even model for the students here, like, okay, what did it say? It said we needed to place a stamp on each one of the areas. And so even though I'm in teacher mode and I can't submit this, I can launch my stamps here. And I can find St. Louis and put my St. Louis one there, and If I wanted to move things, I could go to New York City next, but that gives you an idea. So when you are in the teacher mode, you can hide your answers and you can still model for the students the placing of the icons, the arrows, the different markings on the map. Okay, that's a brief overview of the teacher interface. What I'd like to do now is show you what it looks like. I made an assignment. I'd like to show you the assignment that I made to my students. So I'm going to go from my home page here to assignments and grades. I assigned to my students to do the mapping the news on homelessness in the United States. And let's go in. I'm going to edit that so we can get an idea. When we do create an assignment, we set the due date and an unlock date. The unlock date is the date they can start working on it. So I said, oh, anything from today, and it's due by the 7th. Am I assigning them everything? You can assign them. If I just wanted them to do the reading and not even the mapping activity, I could uncheck these and only assign them the reading or only assign them the mapping activity. But in this case, I do want them to see all 3 parts. I put in my instructions up here. I said, please complete the mapping, short reading, the mapping short reading, the mapping activity, and the summary questions. And I said, in the opening reading, please highlight any sections that discuss the causes of homelessness. So I added that in there. And what I did is I went here to custom highlights, and I created a custom highlight here called causes of homelessness. So when the students go into that reading, they're going to be able to just highlight a section and then use the blue marker to identify that. If we wanted to create another thing, maybe another highlight for vocabulary I don't understand. Oh, here, vocabulary I'd like to know. I can add that highlight. I can delete these others, and I can be done. So now I'm able to customize for any assignment the types of highlights I want my students to use. I selected my class, which is my demo class, and I'm going to save the assignment. Okay, so that's saved nicely now. Let's go in. I'm going to switch over to my student user. And here's what the student interface looks like. So the nice thing about the student interface is I can go to my assignments to see what my assignments are, but the latest assignment is right here under the sort of in this black bar area. The recent activity, we call this. Your assignment, mapping the news, homelessness in the United States, has been updated. So awesome. I can click into that. Once again, I'm working as a student right now. And here we can see the different elements that come up. And if I wanted to see, here are the instructions, those instructions that we put in, complete the mapping short reading, the mapping activity, and highlight the sections that discuss the causes of homelessness. So my main goal right here for the reading section is to go through, and I gave them that close reading for a reason. One, it's going to help them focus on what they're reading, and 2, I happen to know what some of the summary questions are, and one of them, at least one of them, is about what are some of the causes of homelessness. So by getting them to sort of focus in on this while they're doing their initial reading, we're helping them and scaffolding them to be successful in terms of their comprehension. Now, I can see here as I'm skipping to the second paragraph, homelessness is a condition where a person does not have a fixed place or a secure place to stay overnight. It usually is the result of multiple reasons. And then it's going to start listing the different reasons: high cost of housing, food, childcare, education, healthcare. So I'm going to highlight that, and I highlight the area, and I go here to my little marker pen, and I choose my highlight color. And remember, I wanted to do causes of homelessness, and so I can just save that. Oh, here's another one, drug addiction or illness. So I'm going to highlight that. And once again, this was an optional activity. This is not required, but this is something, the highlighting was my idea as a way to get students to focus. And then I'm going to highlight this last sentence here, which also looks like a cause of homelessness. Okay, losing her job or not providing enough money to cover rent and other expenses. So now I've got at least a few things that I've highlighted here, and I can see in my annotations area the causes of homelessness, and I'm ready to go on to my mapping activity. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a portion of this mapping activity. And I think it might be easiest if I'm going to click on this little link here, which is going to take me to full screen. And so that's going to give me more room to work with on my map. And I wanted to show you something before I went to full screen, and that is the read aloud functionality that we can launch here. So I can enable speech. Say I'm a student that's not reading at grade level, or I want a little extra support. I can launch my read aloud toolbar here, and as I'm looking at my instructions, I can click on this little finger and bring it down here, and it should read this initial page of instructions for me. So let's sit back and listen.
Every January, communities across the country take a point in time, count of people experiencing homelessness on a single night. The United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, uses this data to determine the overall scope of homelessness and any important trends. The PIT count is the closest estimate of the number of people without homes in the United States, but there are likely thousands more people across the country who are not included in the count.
Okay, and I can stop it there. I've now had my introduction. I'm going to go back up to my full screen so that I've got the map. I click on the next thing here, and this is basically, it's going to ask me to map homelessness according to several major categories. Individuals, families, and youth, and the numbers of those areas. And I'm not going to map all of, I'm just going to pick California, where I'm here and based, and we'll go through this, and we'll just mark up the things that we need for California. It's said to use Zoom level 5 when placing the stamps. So let me just get over here. So now I've got, so I need to place a person stamp. And I go to my stamps down here, and the person stamp is this one right here. And I'll put him up here in Northern California. And then I'll close that out. Let's see what's the next thing they're going to ask us to do. The point in time data for January 2020 shows that 580,000 people in the United States were without a home on a single night. In California, it was 161,548. Use the text tool and write the following numbers of people without homes next to the person stamp. So I'm going to use the text tool here, and I'm going to put that up here, and I'm going to type in 161,548 and hit enter, and it's now embedded there. Let me go to the next screen. Place a family stamp below the person stamp in each state, and then I'm going to put the number next to that. So I've now got two things to do on this one. So the family stamp is here. Here's my family. Now I'm going to go to my, close that and go to my text tool and put in 25777, right? 25,777, whoops. Okay, let me go back over here. And I need to edit that because it looks like I didn't quite get in there. And I can now add 777. And hit enter, and I'm good, and I can save that. Okay, so now I've got individuals, I've got families. The next thing, a youth, and we'd use the little shirt icon here to put in the youth, and then we want to close that, and California is 16,141, so I'm going to use my text tool to put in that number here. 16,141. And so we've got our numbers there. Okay, so we're learning a little bit about the extent, and if we had done the other states, we would have comparative data for how many people are homeless in each of these different groups. Now here's something interesting. Some communities have found a better way to manage homelessness, and one of them here in each state would be Bakersfield, California. So I collect the little house stamp here and put that down here by Bakersfield. Okay, and I close it out. And now I have completed the mapping activity, or at least I did the portion here for California. And if I zoom back out, we can see Here is all of our information, and I'm going to go back to the non-full screen mode, and I'm going to say, you know what, I'm going to go now to my summary questions, and then I'll be ready to submit. So what are some of, and I'll just put in one thing here so we get an idea of how it works, because I want to show you how we grade and assess this work as well. So what are some of the majors of causes of homelessness? So I'll just say losing a job, medical expenses, not earning enough, pay rent, da, 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 da. And then, you know, what are ways that people can help people find homes? From the, which state from the mapping activity had the highest overall number of people without homes? And I happen to remember that that was California. And what stands out to you about the homeless statistics in your mapping activity? Why is it important to count the number of people, families, and youth experiencing homelessness? So a little bit of an open-ended question there. I'll leave that for another time to answer. As a student, I'm now going to turn in my assignment. It asks me to confirm. I'm not going to be able to change the answers once it's turned in, and it will give me a date, time, and stamp that I turned it in at this particular time on May 4th. So I've got that. I can go back here. I can see my answers, but I can't change any of my answers once it's been submitted, unless you as the teacher allow the students another chance to go back in and work with their content. So now we've seen what it looked like as a teacher for me to assign this activity. We've seen as a student what it's like to both do the close reading, highlight a few things, mark up a few things on the map, answer some of the summary questions, and submit it. And now I'm going to go back to my teacher account, and I'm going to go into my assignments and grades because I now want to grade this. I want to see how student 1 did. And so I'm going to go here. It's on student 28. So I need to figure out where student 1 is. Here's student 1. It's turned in. Okay. And so what you have here, you've got a couple of different things. One is we've got the maps and you've got your answer key. So I can go in here and I can expand this out to full screen and review the answer key again. And I can see okay, California, Texas, Florida, it looked like New Jersey, New York, we can see the numbers that were put in here for the different states so we can get an idea of what to expect there. And now I can go and click on the student answer and expand that out to full screen, and I can see, oh yes, Aaron did exactly what I wanted him to do here in California. Oh, he didn't do anything for Texas and Florida. Maybe I'll make a note to him. And so I'll give him some feedback. Good start. Can you add in the information for Texas and Florida? So that allows me to give feedback. And I'm going to give the students sort of partial credit right now. And that's given them, so that they've got 0.5 out of 5. I go down here, and then here is the expected answer. What are the causes, major causes of homelessness? And in this case, of course, because they're short answer, they're not going to be auto-graded. But I'm going to say, oh, yeah, that looks pretty good. I'm going to give Aaron full credit for that. And I'm going to ding him for that one. And I'm going to give him full credit for this one. And let's pretend I answered something here, full credit here. And it automatically added that up. And it gave me a score of 3.5 out of 5. So that you can leave and it can go into your grade book in that format, or you can change it to whatever you want. Whatever you leave in the grade area is what you're going to see. So if I want to change that to an 80, that can be an 80. If I want to change that to a B minus, that can be a B minus. We can always do that. If I wanted to allow the student another attempt, which I need to do, right, because I want them to work on the information for Texas and Florida, I'm going to go here to new attempt, and I'm going to find student 1. I'm not going to do it for every student. And, oops, I went too far. Student 1. Okay, and here's student one, and I'm going to bring them over and then save that. And now the student will be able to get back in and remap and answer the other questions. Okay, so the one other thing that we did ask the students to do was we were concerned about, well, how are they highlighting the close reading? So to get to that, that's not on the rubric here, but we can view what the student's done. It says it's going to open in a new window, and it's going to show me each student what they actually said. So here's student one. I can toggle between other students. I can go back up here. Here's their answers. But what was it? It was here, solving the homeless crisis. And I can see now what they highlighted. And I can even, if I want to, I can double click on this and I can do a teacher annotation. And I can say, excellent work, and save that. And now the student has a little bell here, which lets them know that the teacher had some sort of a comment about that. And when the student goes through and reviews it, they can see your feedback as well. And then if you want to toggle, you can either go back to the assignments and grades and then change to a different student from here, or you could go through and look and see at how all the students highlighted your information. Okay, well that pretty much covers what I wanted to show you in terms of what is mapping the news, how does it come out, what structure does it take. We saw with the George Floyd lesson that it took the exact same format as the homelessness lesson, in that there's a short reading that introduces the students to the issue, then a mapping activity where they're using the stamps and statistics in order to see the relative geographic distribution of this data, and then they're synthesizing that information in the last component with the questions. So I'm going to stop now and open it up to questions.
We do have a few. Let's see. One is, Elaine had a question about the approximate grade level of the introduction text passage for each assignment.
Right. That's a good question. I'm not sure if we put in, we do often, yeah, it looks like we may not have. Let me see if we put in, we sometimes put in Lexile levels, and you do have Lexile levels here for all of these. So we see that they're really oriented towards middle school. It's something that that high school students, it'll be meaningful to them and they can still engage with it. But this is, the sweet spot is really sort of grades 6 to 8. And you can see that from the Lexile levels here. You can see this one was a little bit more involved, but just because you see a 1200 here and a 900 here doesn't mean that you shouldn't take a look at it and still really evaluate, like, hey, can my kids do that? So excellent question. That's the answer. What else?
Ryan had a tech issue. When he goes to the George Floyd mapping the news activity in active classroom, it says without metadata when he clicks on the mapping activity.
Okay, what does that mean? Ryan, I'll make a note of that, and I'll have, I've seen that before and I forget what causes it, but I'm gonna make a note of it and talk to our tech team and try and figure out what's going on there. It is an error I've seen before. I'm not sure what causes it, but we'll get it fixed for you.
I should try another one just to see if it worked, and it worked on another one. I didn't check them all, but that one, it just kept spinning and gave that message.
Oh, yeah. You know what? I'll check that on Active Classroom. Yeah, the metadata might have been messed up there, but okay, but you were able to get into another one. And so that was just the George Floyd one. I'll look at that one in particular. Thanks for letting us know. Ryan, did you have any other questions while we've got you?
I don't.
Okay, awesome. Jessica, anything else?
Mark made the comment that National World looks set up very similar to Active Classroom, and it seems like a lot of our participants have Active Classroom, but depending on their subscription, correct me if I'm wrong, they should be able to access some of these activities, the National World activities, depending on the subscription that their school or district purchases. Is that correct? Yeah.
Sure. So today was intended to be a focus on Nystrom World and especially and specifically mapping the news in Nystrom World. But since people are, let me log out and let's take a minute. Let's take a look because I know that a lot of you are Active Classroom subscribers. So let me go over there and just show you what you might, how that might be similar or different. But yes, all of this content is also in Active Classroom as well. And we can go there. Let's see. Ooh. Let's try this account. Oops, that's definitely the wrong account. And if I go to my activities, I've got 2 series. In an Active Classroom, we have also, you can go here to your advanced search, go to series title. I hit M and I go down here and there's mapping the news. And so you can get them all for mapping the news as well. And let's see, this is where you tried. Let's see if I have the same problem as you, Ryan. Launching it and George Floyd protests. And let's see, this one seems to be working. Okay.
Yeah, yours went farther than mine did. Mine didn't get to the map.
Okay. Did you get to the reading part?
Yeah, the other pieces came up fine. And you
Okay.
know, I've addressed this now. I just was wondering if I was doing something incorrect.
No, you're not. You're not. It's an error I've seen before, and I don't remember what causes it, but we'll get it fixed for you. And so what else? The other thing that we could talk about, since many of you do have the Active Classroom subscription, is Active Classroom also has another series called Current Events that is not about sort of mapping these the events, but it does take on the issue of current events. And so I can come here to series title, and it's right here under C for current events. And so here, this is also going to appear in the order as they're posted. So the most recent one was on reopening schools. Then we had economic recovery. This was obviously post-COVID. We had a current events activity on the first 100 days, a current events activity on environmental activism. And these take a similar format as well. So they don't have the mapping, but they usually have a number of primary sources, and then usually they usually have an introduction. So here you've got a text-based introduction with some comprehension questions. And then we've got multiple sources that the students go through in order to answer. And I mean, they analyze these sources, and then there's quick questions to make sure they're paying attention. And then finally, they get to some discussion questions. And in the information fact-finding mission, you're going to develop a project that provides information about a person or organization connected to climate activism. After you research the information and write a questionnaire, find the contact information of the individual, reach out to the person and ask them to fill out the questionnaire. So these lessons are largely designed with the C3 framework in mind. And so this is obviously a sort of a dimension for taking informed action. So we get the students working through that inquiry arc where they begin with an initial inquiry question. They go to then sort of close readings as that. They then are focused on sourcing as well as a way to develop their information and then ultimately take that to informed action. And most all of the current events lessons take that same format. So for Nystrom World users, we've got the mapping the news, and then for Active Classroom users, we have both mapping the news as well as current events. Jessica, any other questions out there?
I got one more. I'll just a quick follow-up. But Jessica, go ahead if there's someone else that want to take all the questions.
Oh, no, you can go ahead.
I'm just wondering, Aaron, if you can say a little bit about how these current event or mapping the news pieces are produced. Like, who is there a development team that?
Sure, good. Yeah, that's a good question. So how do we even come up with these different ideas? So there's several authors that we use, and then there's a development team in editorial, and they begin about once a quarter. They go through, and obviously there's a real challenge here. You want to be able to sort of plan out the next couple of months of like, okay, what are we going to be featuring? But then if something, happens all of a sudden last week, we shift gears and we try and insert that in. So we both try and plan ahead with some general topics in mind. If we look at even the current events, you can go back, oh, Israel and its neighbors. This must be going back to the fall when we had Israel, making the peace agreements with the different groups. So that seemed like something that we wanted to talk about. And then first 100 days obviously was very timely. So this is done with an editor who's working in consultation with an editorial team and writers.
Well, just comment, I'd like to say I appreciate you leaning into the kind of the C3 inquiry model there for some of the new content that's being produced. So keep building that content, please.
Awesome. Thanks very much. Yeah. Yeah, we think that's an important approach, and we think it really develops, what the students need to know in terms of both getting through the content as well as really developing the skills they need to be informed thinkers and citizens.
Elaine does have a question. Mm-hmm. Is mapping the news, the Nastrom mapping activities, is that something that could be projected onto a smart board so the kids could see it in a bigger version?
Yes, absolutely. So everything is projectable. I mean, it's on the computer. So whatever you can do on the computer, you can project it. You can have it on your smart board. And I really like that idea. I think these are the types of things. Obviously, I didn't show you anything that was too complicated that's going to get the students caught up. But we do recommend like modeling this for them, bringing it up there, showing it, full screen in the front of the class. Maybe even the students come up and they take turns marking up the single screen and you do it as a whole class activity. Or you just bring it out there and you, model the first question or two for them, and then you send them on their way to do their own thing. Okay, great. Glad that works for you.
I really thought about, as I was looking at it, I was thinking about the implications for other courses like ethnic studies and how you can use the map in the news and the current events for those so what, now what, so in any course, not necessarily in the ethnic studies,
mm-hmm.
But if you're building any course, you can use the so what, now what, and the current events piece could bring it home. Could help.
Tell me a little bit more about what you mean by the so what, now what. That sounds like it's a bigger package.
Yeah, so I've done like the history piece, right? I've looked at, let's say I've looked at the Harlem Renaissance. I'm just going to use that one, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've looked at it. I've looked at the historical implications. And if you're developing a lesson, I could actually see going and finding those current events that are aligned to the topics to make it relevant for students today. So I looked at the historical background. Now what? What are the implications for today? Like, how do I make it relevant to today? And I can see some melding of some of those different series to make that happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Nice. Okay. Thanks for that. What else? Any other questions or observations?
On my end, I do not see any other questions. Olavisi, I've been speaking with you. Is everything good on your end with Active Classroom and seeing the Nastrom World activities?
Okay, well, listen, Jessica and I will stay here for another couple of minutes. If anything suddenly comes to you, we'll stay on another 5 minutes, and we're happy to take your questions. But we want to thank you for coming out today, learning a little bit more about both Nystrom World and Active Classroom, about the Mapping the News program, and we're going to continue to develop that. And if you guys do have ideas for topics, hey, feel free to email us and say this would be a great topic. Some of the topics that we saw there today came in because of folks in the field.
I have also put a link to a survey. If you could take that really quick before you leave, it'll only take just a few seconds, about our webinar this evening. Elaine, I saw that you asked about a professional development certificate. I believe if you email our help department, they can help you with that.
Yeah, help@socialstudies.com.
Got it.
And just say I participated in this webinar and I'd like a certificate, and they've got a nice little design they'll send over to you.
You know what? Talk about great service on a great product and the ideas that everybody shared, not just you, Dr. Willis, but different colleagues who joined in like for different courses. And I was getting ready to type cross-curricular, you know, this is like it's not an end-all product in that